What's up, everybody? I'm Will Reynolds, founder and I guess I'm VP of Innovation and janitor some days and everything else here at Seer Interactive. Thank you for having me. And I want to talk about the fact that people are busy. Clients are busy, and I wanted to help you all communicate to your busy clients. What is the one page that they should build? Because so often we send our clients these massive audits and we give them all these things they should do. They get overwhelmed and none of it gets done. And then we also don't get to see our work ever reach the light of day, which, let's be honest, we like seeing our work get out there so then we can see if it works, so then we can learn and do more good work. So when I try to talk to a client, one of the things I try to do is say, look, if you can't do all this stuff, here's the one thing you should do. And I will tell you that goes a very, very far way in consulting. So let's apply that to our world. But I'm not going to start off by giving you all the tactics. I'm going to start off by reminding you that we are in business. And the language of business, my friends, is money, 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 right? So we have to be able to talk money. One of the biggest reasons why we don't get things done is we're unwilling to make a set of assumptions and put a risk and put a dollar sign on something. Heck, I mean, somebody told the Segway team, some really smart people, they were going to sell millions of them, and then they sold like 30,000 of them, right? But at some point, you got to be willing to put your stuff out there, and I want to give you a framework that might help you to come up with the metrics and the numbers that give you a little bit more confidence to put a dollar sign next to your recommendations. So one of our alumni, Nico Maselli, loved this guy. This is a picture of him coming back to the office back in the day to talk to us about his new gig at Google. And he said to me recently, he goes, when I talk to people, I say, show me the least amount of data that tells the biggest story. And I'm like, oh, Nico, I'm quoting you on that. Because so often when I go to show a client what all is possible, I'm like showing them all the things. And he's reminded me to narrow that down. And you know what's funny is I think especially from SEO or content folks, we come from a world where we think this is an accomplishment, right? And this is just a tweet that I took from somebody, and we've all been there. You know, we look at the output of our work. Oh my God, I wrote 1,500 words and 66 pages later. I've done this SEO audit. Oh, it's amazing. And it's like, is it going to make the client any money? Well, I don't know. I don't have that in my 15,000 words. And it's like, well, that's the most important word because that's the language of business. So we've kind of come up in an industry where we are rewarded. We tend to talk a lot about our outputs and how big they are or how much work we did, but we don't talk about the outcomes, which is how do we grow our clients' businesses? Because ultimately, this is what everybody wants to know. What should I do first? Why should I do it? And what is it worth? When you send over your 66-page audit, this is the question on everyone's mind. Because once I know what to do first, then I can look for the data that will tell me if I should double down and do the rest of it. One of my favorite people on this planet is a competitor, actually. It's this guy, Will Critchlow, runs an amazing company called Trustpilot. You should definitely check them out. But one day he said to me, hey, Will, I actually model out for my clients or some clients when I'm having these conversations around impact is what would it look like if I grew your traffic 10% every month, 12 months in a row? And then he can show, like, see, if we can do this smaller chunk, 10% every month, we will get to this big end state goal that we want or don't want. And it also helps him to avoid clients who have misset expectations. And he said that to me like, I feel like it was 10 years ago, and it's still stuck with me. All right, so let me give you a little story. How often is it that you're asking a client for lifetime value or what's the value of a sale or what's the value of a lead, and then you get this answer, right? Just literally like, lifetime value, I'll get back to you on that. And you know what? I've done this time and time again where I've asked for a revenue metric, lifetime value, value of a lead, and then the client tends to keep me spun up so long that I never actually get the number to plug in to my spreadsheet to understand my ultimate impact. And I think 99% of us, we go, oh, you don't have that? No problem. Let's go ahead and get started. I recently had a team where they were working on a client and they weren't getting traction. And I looked at how they were reporting and talking to the client about all the things they should do. And I said, you have no dollar signs. You have no dollar signs. How are they supposed to know what you're going to do? And I said, let me build something for you that might help you to better communicate. And I'm really happy to say that not only have we gotten the work implemented for the most part, we've also expanded our relationship with that client, all because we started talking the value of money. So it's easy to be a 1%er. Don't be like the 99% of people in our industry that go, oh, as long as I get the ranking. It's like, no, drive forward, right? So be one of the 1%ers, and it's really easy. All you got to do is Google stuff. So I have a client, again, that I mentioned. They are in the hospital space, and they said, we don't know our lifetime value. My team originally had accepted that as like, okay, we asked. So now we're going to give you this audit and tell you we want to increase traffic by 30%. And it's like, well, what's that? Somebody somewhere is going to ask, what's that going to do for my business? And the harder time you have answering that question, the less likely you are to get your shit done. So I said, you know what? I'm going to Google revenue from urgent care visits. And then I'm going to read the links. Then I'm going to Google urgent care cost per patient. And I'm going to read those links, right? And what I was able to do was to start to build out a calculator that talked about the business. So now I'm starting to get numbers, $123 per visit, blah, 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 blah. Here's the average visit, different clinics. So I could say to my client, here's the information that I have. That's why I'm making this estimate. Instead of sitting around and I just showed them thing after thing after thing. This kept me from sitting around, waiting for them to give me a number, for me to know my impact, right? So if you don't know how the company values your work, how can you value your work, right? Like you have to know how this stuff levels up to dollars. So what I did is I built a calculator, and I love doing calculators live with my clients because I can take their questions in real time and adjust the assumptions and get answers to if there's an ROI worth building this 1 page or 10 pages or 100 pages. So let's go. So what I do is I build out a calculator that basically says, here are the assumptions about the opportunity. Here's the value of a session. I have it at 26 cents. I'm just playing around with the data here. What's the value of a reservation for somebody that comes in person? And for them, they had reservations that were remote as well. Now for me, I like to say, well, go get the paid search data and get those costs per clicks. Because what you can say to your client is, hey, you're willing to pay this much for this word in paid, and you did all year. Therefore, you're willing to pay for a visitor. Not enough of us calculate the value of the visits that we drive to our client sites from our content. If you don't have paid data, so what? Go to SEMrush, right? Like don't accept no for an answer and be a 99%er. Keep digging and come up with some assumption because then you can plug it into your sheet. And I will tell you, once you're doing this live with the client and I put in the session value and the other assumptions, they will tell you if they think that that number's way off or not. But if you just leave those things blank and ask them to fill it in, you're probably never going to get an answer. And you got to be ready for pushback. Oh, well, I think that number's wrong. Great. How much lower should we make it? And when it's in a calculator, and I will show you this, it enables you to really adjust in real time and determine if the project is worth it or not. And I also like to link out to my sources. So somebody wants to challenge you and they push back. Well, where did you get that? It's like, I got this from this place, and this place. And then we can have a conversation about their credibility, but at least it shows that I didn't make this stuff up. But you're not done yet. We got to keep pushing. So now you've got to figure out what are the resources it's going to take for me to take advantage of this opportunity, right? The resources cost money. So what I do is I put in assumptions. What's the cost of a SEER team member? What's the cost of their internal team? Drop them in. They have responses. My team has responses, and I adjust them in real time in front of everybody because as you will see, it will tell me if this project is worth it. Because I'm also asking, what is the minimum ROI that you think you need on this project in order for it to be worth you moving all these people, my team, etc. Okay? And then I take each one of my recommendations and I put them into a sheet and say, how many hours is it going to take your team internally? How many hours is it going to take SEER? And now I can come up with a cost of completing the effort. But in order to determine ROI, I need to also look at valuing a good, better, and best case scenario. So now I'll put in a number of sessions, which I am multiplying by cost per visit, or those CPCs I showed you earlier. And then I'm taking my reservations in person and remote and this client had 3 different cohorts that we were working with. 3 different cohorts of users who had different behaviors. So we had to have 3 different lines. That's why we have that there. All right, and remember, I got the ROI minimum. So now what I can do is I can say in my good scenario, we're gonna make $66,000 and get an ROI of 424%, but that is way under the 1,500% ROI that, you want the value for your marketing dollar that you were looking for. So then I know the project's not worth it, right? And then usually that leads to a different conversation. But in my best and better scenario, I'm looking a heck of a lot better. So then it becomes a conversation around, hey, if I build this page, Will, do you really think I can get this many sessions, this many reservations, yada, yada, yada? And we have a little bit of back and forth, but at least we know that we can adjust these assumptions in real time and then have that conversation. And it's so important for you and your client to determine what are you really aiming for. Because actually for me, this exercise is to avoid unattainable success metrics. How many of us have gotten 6 months, 12 months in to find out that there's no way we're going to hit this client's goal that we had initially set? Way too many of us. So I like to use this process to also have a conversation that's like, look, if you're telling me you need a 15-to-1 return on your marketing dollar, and I got a 4-to-1, well, the data's telling us we probably shouldn't do this project and I should go look for other ways to try to help grow your business. Or maybe search is not the right thing for you. Maybe we shouldn't produce any content because I can't find a pathway to get you to the ROI that you're seeking. Now you ready? All right, cool. So we want to talk about how do we find the one piece of content that will make all of this work for you. And keep in mind, I started with the business side because so often that's what we miss. Again, we're talking money, common language, not cost per clicks, pages, or rankings. We're talking money, all right? What are my ingredients? So I like to take paid search data and SEO data. If you have Google Search Console data, the one thing I like about it is it allows you to look at what your click-through rate might be in different ranking positions, which I think helps you to say, hey, if I can get you to an average ranking of 8 for these words, here's your typical click-through rate on non-branded keywords in that position or for this type of cohort of keywords. So we're going to use your own data to come up with a model that can tell me how many clicks do I actually think I can get by position. So then I know what my average position needs to be to make the math work. But in this instance, I'm not using Google Search Console data because I did not have it for this client. And then you're going to have to use some kind of tool, Power BI, Tableau, SQL, something that enables you to join all this data together. All right. So remember how I had sessions? What I like to do is take the client's data, all their search terms in the last 12 months. For this client, I took their 196 search terms. I like to look at all their competitors, 16,000 different people ranked somewhere in the top 10 for those 196,000 words. And then I like to look at all the different content that's able to rank in the top 10. And that's 279,000 different pieces of content. We're able to rank for those 196,000 words. Now we're talking about some pretty big data here. So when I actually walk a client through whether or not an opportunity is meaningful, so I take a keyword group. In this instance, you can see, whoops, let me go back. You can see this number 35 right here, right? So that's part of my keyword group. Then I can say to my client, hey, we have 22,000 keywords that include whatever it is from that keyword group. Here's how many clicks you got from your paid campaigns. Here's how many conversions you got, and here's how much you spent, okay? So then my first question is that meaningful enough as a cohort of keywords for us to look into going after? Let's assume the client goes, yeah, that's a lot of money and a lot of conversions. I want you all to figure out what is the one page that I need to create to win in that space. So the next thing I do is I go, all right, well, let's make sure that we're not already winning in that space well enough to where we might not be able to get the full lift. So I look at all the different URLs for that client, and then I can say, okay, in the top 10, URL number 1 has 89 keywords, URL 2 is able to rank for 54, URL number 3 is able to rank for 34, and then I'm taking all those 89 keywords and summing up their number of conversions and saying, okay, here's how many conversions they're able to show up for. So now, as you can see, I'm able to kind of play the game of, okay, you got 198 conversions on 89 keywords, but I see that there's a total of 9,000 conversions out there. So now that gives me a little bit of a feeling on like, all right, I'm going to be taking small chunks out if I only optimize the pages you already have. So maybe I need to make a new one. And then this is where the fun comes in. So remember, I had all those URLs at the top, those top 4 URLs up here in the top right, and their keywords, conversions, etc., right? But now what I'm saying is, I'm going to look at all the different pages that are able to rank in the top 10 and look at how many keywords they're able to rank for, how much we spent on those keywords, and how many conversions were we able to get for those keywords, okay? So now I can see a company, like in the first line, the blurred out company, they were able to rank for 371 different keywords with one page, and the best we were ever able to do was 89 keywords with one page. However, The words aren't ones that really move the business. And now, my friends, you hopefully see why it's so critical to bring in these cost and conversion metrics. Because if I was just going to go after the vanity metric, which was like, oh, it ranks for the most keywords, it wouldn't be the one that's going to move the needle on the business the most. That's why, my friends, I'm recommending we look at Walmart. And Walmart, which doesn't rank for as many keywords, is ranking for the critical keywords that drive us, that we spend a lot of money on and we get a lot of conversions on. So now let's look at this Walmart page. 328 keywords in the top 10 versus our best performing page only gets 89. And 624 conversions from this single page on Walmart's page. Now, here's what I mean when I say that. So let me be super clear. The Walmart page, I do not know how much Walmart spent and how many conversions Walmart got. What I am able to ascertain is how many keywords is that page able to rank for that I am bidding on. Then of those 328 keywords that I'm bidding on, how much did I spend on them? $71,000 here. And how many conversions did I get in my paid campaign on those 328 keywords? Got it? Good. All right, so now I can look at the different pages that are winning. Here's Walmart's page. So now if I'm going, okay, what kind of page should I build? I'm getting inspiration from the types of pages that Google's already rewarding. Now, sometimes you got to look at a Walmart and go, yeah, but Will, they're this massive brand, right? So then you have to pick other folks to look at. So maybe I look at a smaller brand like a Discount Tire and I go, this is a page that's able to rank. This was the second best page. Interesting. Or there's another page that had a lot of e-commerce at the top, so typical products, but then they had all these question and answers down here. So now what I'm starting to do is get a feel for the different parts of pages and how those pages look. So when I come back to my client, I can say, hey, I looked at the top 10 pages that are able to rank for the most keywords and drive the most conversions for you. Here's what they all had in common from a layout standpoint, and here are some of the ones that had outliers on certain things they did that other people weren't doing. And I will tell you, I have seen all kinds of pages, even pages like this one, were able to rank for hundreds of keywords, which is so different than the Walmart pages, right? But what I'm able to do is look for different keyword cohorts and find out what is Google rewarding, okay? Yeah, this was a really interesting one right here. All right, so the last page I just showed you was around mud, right? So I'm looking at the keyword group mud. See it up here in the top left, mud. And I can say, okay, my client has spent $13,000 on keywords that included mud. They got this many conversions. I ask them if it's meaningful. If they say yes, I go, okay, you have a page that ranks for 39 of those keywords in the top 10, but this domain is ranking for 323 of those keywords. And you're only capturing, let's say it's a third. About a third of those conversions. So by having this information and this data at your fingertips, I can drop in any keyword group, quickly show our clients who's ranking. Then the consultant part of me needs to ascertain like, hey, here's what I think is up with them, and here's why I think they might be ranking. And then we start saying like, hey, if we could build a page that competes with that, recoup $13,000 in what you're spending in paid, so I at least know that those words and the traffic from those words has a value to you that's 13 grand, and that value of spending that money is worth getting those 83.14 conversions. What's really interesting is then I typed in the word truck, and I'm able to see Forbes ranking. So now this is such a different page than what my client would have told me to go after. Forbes is actually outranking Walmart in this instance. And that would have never been on my client's radar. So now for truck keywords, right? I can look at all the different keywords here, where my client ranks, where the competitors rank, yada, yada, yada. I'm able to say, Forbes is ranking, right? And then I dig in and I show the client that, and then that leads to a different conversation. Maybe we should just advertise on Forbes if we don't think we can build the same kind of page. But then you have a bunch of questions that are left, right? So what I'm doing is I'm saying like, we have to select a page design layout for our single page that we're going to build. And then we've got to look at the ones I just showed as examples and say, can we build these? Some people will say, oh, well, we can't do a page like that for X, Y, or Z reason. Great. Well, then we can't really compete with what we're seeing Google rewarding. So why build a page that we're starting from a place of one hand is kind of tied behind our backs if we're only going to build one page to show our value? The next thing is resources. How much we got to build it? How much do we have in terms of money? How much do we have in terms of time? Okay. And then the last thing is, how high can I rank and can I actually win on those keywords? Because, for instance, if it's a branded keyword and the brand takes up 6 of the top 8 spots, well, then your best bet is position 7. And is that going to get you enough traffic in position 7 to make it a possible, to make that ROI that the client was looking for? Sometimes you'll see Amazon or other big brands that just crush click-through rates for people below them, which I have analyzed before. And I'll tell you, there are certain brands that if they are above you, your click-through rate will drop precipitously if you're in position 2 than if they're not, okay? So you got to kind of calculate some of those questions when you're thinking of whether or not targeting something is worth it. And that gets to like, right, what's the best click-through rate can I get, right? So if I win, what's the best click-through rate that I think I can get in these various positions, because that affects the traffic you're going to get. And remember, you're valuing those visitors and you're saying how many of those visitors return to conversion. So you're going to value the visit. Therefore, it's important to also understand what the click-through rate is at different positions. And then how long will it take me to rank? And then even more importantly, how long can I rank for this keyword? Because in certain industries, as you'll see, freshness really matters. So you may not be able to build this once and rank. You might have to support it over time with additional resources. Let's take a look at these truck tire keywords. Recent, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, down there, right? So what this is telling me is that we're going to need some amount of updating on an annual basis. And it might only be 4 or 5 hours. It might not be that much, right? A year. But we do want to calculate and count for that in our analysis. But then I also going to ask you while you're there, and this is something I always talk about, but don't have time to talk to you about today, is to look at the people also ask questions. And when you're comparing yourself to those URLs that are already ranking, ask yourself, how many of those pages are answering the questions that Google knows are already on people's minds? And that's another way to separate yourself from what the other pages that have been built look like, potentially. I find that most people, when they build landing pages, don't take too much of the people also ask into account. Now, this is an e-commerce example, but looking at these like little filters. Okay, so Google knows that people care about pricing and money, and they have different ranges that people are looking at. Then they also care about brands. This is another thing to be considering and a clue that I would bring to my landing page build. I'm going to switch gears here and give you an example of a keyword, around savings accounts for kids. And can my 5-year-old have a savings account? Gets me thinking, okay, so maybe my landing page, which nobody does really well, could talk about different age groupings and how to talk to those different age groups around savings. Just by looking at the people also asks can help me to make an even better landing page than the things that already exist and rank. Another clue that I get from Google when I search for savings accounts for kids, images? Really? Isn't that interesting? So now if we were to go ahead and look at some of the people that are winning, it's important to kind of divide these up into groups. So, there's actual banks that have a product. So here is Wells Fargo and here's Capital One. But then there's also comparison sites like NerdWallet. And this is a blog post on Credit Karma and a blog post on Forbes again. And then Business Insider also had a comparison page with a table. So now what you're starting to see is what I call SERP diversity, which means Google's saying to answer this question, savings account for kids, there's multiple different ways to answer that question. So now if you're a bank, you're thinking, I'm never going to sit and compare myself to my competitors on my landing page. Well, that means 2 of the spots, NerdWallet and Business Insider, you're probably not going to be able to get. But then you can write a blog post if you got a blog, so that means you might be able to compete with like a Credit Karma or a Forbes. But keep in mind, they are publishers. Very often I find that brands, when they say, oh, I'm going to compete and build this one page to win on these keywords, they write more like a brand than a publisher. And Google in this instance is rewarding publishers. NerdWallet, Credit Karma, Forbes, Business Insider, all publishers. Wells Fargo and Capital One are the only actual banks on this page. Now, in spite of seeing some of those things, if I type for savings account for kid, this image doesn't really feel like the right image, does it? And actually, if you look at the page, it's not even the right page. And this is what happens, my friends, in paid search. This page isn't even close. isn't even close to answering the question around kids. But this one is. But it's ugly as hell, right? And if you think about it, right, like, the account is linked until they're 13, 24. And it's like, these aren't the ages that Google understood that people were asking questions about. People are asking questions about 5-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and we're not speaking the language. And this page ranks number 1, which tells me if I really wanted to go after this word and knock them out, by looking at the people also asks and better understanding the user, there's a chance that I might be able to, because they're literally not taking the clues that Google has already shown and bringing them to light here. Also remember, Google showed a big fat image set and said, hey, people tend to look at images when they look at this. That's what Google thinks, right? And you look at that algorithmic page and it reminds me of this quote. Yeah, right? Like if you look at that Wells Fargo page, let's just go back one. That looks like a page built by an SEO. It says all the right things, but it really isn't that compelling and it doesn't really answer the question on a real parent's mind. All right. So in order to be cognizant of time, I like this page, right? At least it shows a kid. But what's interesting is, and remember, that it's not outranking Wells Fargo. Still, in spite of the fact that it is at least showing some kind of an image that says this isn't just an SEO'd page of content. But I think that if we keep just following the algorithm, we end up with algorithmic results, pages that all look the same. And I like using these people also ask and these other clues to try to find a way to use them as a proxy to better understand the customer. So my landing pages, when I go to build that one big landing page, will hit for the people that are going to it. And I'll leave you with this as I was going through all the different pages around ties. I saw pages like this that ranks for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words with very few conversions. And then I saw pages like this that rank for very few words, but a lot more conversion. So make sure you're bringing those things together. Whoops. There we go. Make sure you're bringing those paid search data points together, because ultimately, if you just follow traffic, that first page I would have shown you, it would have been like, yes, that one ranks for the most keywords, but it barely drives any conversions. So my friends, bring the data together. Next time your client asks you about content, I know for me, I'm trying more and more to show the value of building one piece of content and turning those clients into advocates instead of going away for months, building out all this stuff, and then coming back and saying, hey, we need you to build 100 pages after we did this deep analysis. I like to instantly join the data, instantly find the one page they should build, instantly make the business case for that based on some Google searching if they're not willing to give me the information, sit down with them, build out a profit and a revenue model for those pages, and then we know what pages to go build because we have a revenue model that says it's worth it. All right, friends, hope you have a great day today. Enjoy the rest of the show. See ya.